You are a communications professional with great ideas and lots of ambition, but somehow you always find yourself stuck writing the newsletters. Maybe you're tired of explaining to your boss why you need more than 24 hours notice to produce a great video. Or perhaps you're frustrated that employees won't be honest with you in focus groups because they just see you as part of the HR team. You're not seen as a strategic communicator. It is frustrating and you feel very stuck. If you are nodding along right now, if this is you, then I want you to watch this video because maybe the problem isn't you or your approach or how you work. Maybe the problem is where you report, where you sit in the organization. In this video, I want to talk about the controversial question in internal communications. What is the right reporting line for an internal comms team? Where should internal communications sit in an organization? Because maybe your reporting line is holding you back. I'm going to share my honest opinion in this video based on my many years of experience working in internal communications. You may disagree with me, and that's okay, but let's talk about it. There are 3 reporting lines I see most commonly in internal communications. I have reported to all of these. There is HR, marketing, and corporate communications. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about kind of the pros and cons of all of them and give you my pretty strong opinion on which one I prefer and why. Okay, my hot take is this. I don't think that internal communications should report to HR. Now, don't come at me. I will explain and you can make up your own mind. Now, before we get into that juicy stuff, I have a favour to ask you. Will you just hit that subscribe button down below? Never let it be said, I'm a woman with no ambition. I would love to grow this channel to 10,000 subscribers. I need your help to do that. Thank you very much. Let's jump in. Okay, let's talk about the HR reporting line first. This is probably the most common one I see in my clients. And there's quite a few reasons why internal comms often sits under HR. So let's look at that first so we can understand why this happens. Okay, the first reason that I see for this reporting structure is internal comms is often kind of categorized as an employee issue, isn't it? And in any organizations, anything that's an employee issue automatically goes under HR. And there's a simple logic there that will be quite appealing to leaders who want to create clean organizational structures. The second reason this reporting line is so common because internal communication and employee engagement are often kind of conflated as if they're the same thing. And employee engagement is often seen as HR territory. They run the employee engagement surveys and they run all these employee initiatives. So leaders often feel like it makes sense for internal comms to sit under HR for those reasons. The third reason I see why internal comms sits under HR is in some organizations there's a kind of a misconception of what internal comms is all about, and it can be seen as the department that tells employees about HR initiatives and explains policies and benefits, and that's kind of it. If that is the understanding of internal communication in an organization, then yes, leaders will probably put it under HR. And another reason this reporting line is so common, it might simply be historical. In some organizations, internal comms kind of grew organically as a function within HR, and there's never really been a conversation about, is this the right place for it to sit, or could we structure this in a different way? So there's a bunch of reasons why this reporting line is so common, but I just have a real issue with it. I think it fundamentally misunderstands what strategic internal communication is all about. When internal comms reports to HR, I see the same challenges and problems coming up again and again and again in lots of different organizations. Let me talk you through these and then you'll probably understand why I just really don't recommend this reporting line. I don't really like it. The first and maybe the most annoying from the perspective of the internal communications practitioner, you will be reporting to a boss that does not understand communication. They might be brilliant at HR, but they probably won't understand the nuances of strategic internal comms. They probably won't appreciate or understand the sheer effort and planning needed for a really good, effective strategic campaign. They may not understand why it's so important for you to say no to all those random requests that you get around the business. I mean, think about it. You're reporting to a HR leader and not a comms leader. They don't really understand our world. This fundamental disconnect can just be like super frustrating. I have experienced this firsthand myself. I see it in many of my clients too. Secondly, and kind of related to that, when internal comms reports to HR, I find there's a real risk of internal comms being the kind of the HR mouthpiece, and all you do is you talk to employees about what HR wants them to know. Instead of working to improve communication across the whole organization, your work becomes entirely about HR stuff like employee wellness programs or benefit programs. And worse, maybe your entire strategic focus gets buried under HR objectives in their strategy, rather than aligning your work to broader business goals like efficiency or retention of staff or productivity or whatever it is the business is focused on. Maybe you find yourself solely focusing on HR objectives in a much more narrow and stifling way. And you can kind of end up stuck in a HR bubble, can't you? Rather than thinking about and contributing to the bigger picture of the business. This can be pretty limiting, particularly if you want to be a strategic communicator, you want to be seen by leaders that is really adding strategic value. It's very hard to do this when you're buried under HR. Now, another reason I kind of don't like this reporting line too much is a big part of an internal communicator's job is to make sure that you are regularly listening to employees and you understand the sentiment and what's working, what's not. It can be quite hard to run a focus group where you expect employees to be super honest with you, but you work in HR, because employees will rarely be totally honest with the HR department. Now, is that fair? Probably not. Is it true anyway? Yes, in my experience it is. So this just makes your job a little bit more difficult. And last but definitely not least, why I don't favour internal comms reporting to HR is it can really limit your access to budget and resources. HR is viewed as a cost centre rather than a revenue generator. HR will always be heavily scrutinised by finance to run as lean and efficiently as possible. If internal comms sits in HR, you're competing then for an already quite small slice of a pie, and this can make it really hard to get budget for an employee app or to hire a freelancer or to get an additional person on your team, simply because you're part of a function that is expected to keep costs as low as possible. So that's the HR reporting line. I'm not the biggest fan of it. It does happen a lot, but I hope this maybe helps you think about it in a different way. Let's talk about another reporting line now. This one a lot less common, but I do see it. This is where internal comms reports to marketing. This is another reporting line that I don't particularly recommend. Being an internal comms team that reported to marketing, I didn't love it. I see it in other organizations where I can see kind of the same challenges that I had when I did it. And for me, the fundamental problem here is misalignment of goals. Think about the goals of a marketing team. They're focused on driving revenue. So they want to build brand awareness, they want to generate leads, they want to pass those leads onto the sales team, all with the ultimate goal of driving revenue for the business. But internal communication isn't really like that. We are more focused on that internal strategic alignment, ensuring that employees have the information they need to do their jobs to the best of their ability. The employees feel connected to the company and understand how their work is helping the business succeed. They're not naturally aligned with revenue the way that marketing try to align with revenue. So I feel like there's just a fundamental disconnect. And this disconnect can cause some friction, which I see happen in these kind of reporting lines. The first thing I see is that internal comms becomes like an afterthought or like the poor second cousin, because the external campaigns will always take priority because they drive revenue. So what you might find is that there's a queue for, access to the videographer or the graphic design, and the internal comms stuff will always get put at the bottom of that queue. It will always take second billing. There may also be some pressure for internal comms to take more of a marketing salesy approach, to be a little bit promotional with employees. It may even be rebranded as internal marketing, which I feel like employees don't love. They don't want to feel like we're there to sell things. They just want open, honest communication where they can understand what's happening and they can ask questions too. So it can risk that sort of move away from the transparency and the authenticity that we really treasure and love in internal comms into something a bit more marketing, a little bit more salesy. So that's why I kind of don't love this reporting line. All right, so if I don't want internal comms to report to HR, I also don't want them to report to marketing. What is a better option? I do have a better option for you. I'm not just here to have a good whinge. In my experience, internal comms can work at its best when it sits within a centralized communications team. This might be called corporate communications or corporate affairs, something like that. And the internal communications team will report to a director of communications or a chief communications officer. Here's why I just like this reporting line so much more. It means that you, as an internal communicator, are reporting directly to a communications professional. They truly understand what you do and why it matters and why you need that time and space to create really great content that resonates with people and that is aligned with your strategic objectives. They understand the importance of those objectives. They also understand that execution takes time. They're not as likely to ask you, can you just, and just whip up something like immediately. They know that these things take time. And they can also mentor you. If you report to a communications leader, you will learn and grow so much, particularly if you are earlier in your career. This is just the best way to learn. Another thing I really like about this reporting line is internal communications gets proper representation at the executive level. You will be reporting to a communications leader who can then speak to all the C-suite leaders, all the executives in your organization, and talk about the strategic value of internal communication and advocate for you at that top table. Instead of your work being presented by, say, a HR leader who might struggle to articulate the strategic value of communication, you have a communication leader up there in front of the C-suite who can really talk about it in a way that they will understand, and they can link it to the business objectives. And they can do things like they can explain clearly why your team isn't dropping everything to work on non-strategic projects, or why the town hall takes more than 2 days notice to plan it really well. They can also advocate for why internal comms might need more resources or budget. They understand it, they get it, and then they can communicate that at the highest level in the organization. Another thing I like about this reporting line is the alignment it can create between internal and external messaging. In this reporting line, the internal comms team and the external comms team are in the same department, and it really helps you to coordinate on messages so that employees are hearing news from you first rather than seeing it on social media or seeing it on the front page of the news when it's announced by the PR team. And you can also leverage each other's content. There might be something brilliant that the external comms team are doing that you know will resonate with the target audience inside, or you might be doing some internal stories that the PR team could use to pitch to media and vice versa. It just makes sense to have them in the same department. And the last thing that I really like about this reporting line is it gives you that independence from HR objectives. You can truly work at a higher level across the business to really improve organizational communication. You're really well positioned to look at broader business goals rather than just HR goals. And I feel like this gives you more of an opportunity to work on lots of stuff that leaders really care about to help drive business outcomes and ultimately become that strategic partner, that leader that you want to be. Now, I know some people might say, look, like internal comms should definitely sit under HR because it's part of the employee experience, right? How do you take them apart like that? But here's the thing, any good internal communicator will understand the importance of employee experience because listening is such a big part of the work they do. They're out there running focus groups. They're going and shadowing people on their day job. They understand all of this anyway. They don't need to be a part of HR to do that. So that is really my take on this. I really encourage people to put their internal comms team in the comms team. To me, it just makes so much sense. Now, there is a caveat to everything I've just said, because maybe you're watching this and you're thinking, oh crap, like I am in an internal comms team that reports to HR. I can't change that. I can't influence that. Am I doomed? No, you're not doomed, because I think the reporting line can impact your work, but there are fundamentals in place that will have greater influence on your success in internal communications. Things like, do you have a clear purpose and a strategy for internal communications in your company? Do you have the autonomy and the resources you need to do your job really well? Do you have direct access to leaders and key stakeholders? And do you have the authority to challenge and push back when you need to? I have seen internal communication teams be hugely successful when they have these fundamentals in place, even if their reporting line isn't ideal. And vice versa. I have seen teams really struggle even when their reporting line is great because they don't have these fundamentals in place. So don't panic. That's my take on reporting lines in internal comms. I would love to hear from you. Do you disagree with me? Do you agree? Where should internal comms sit in an organization? Let me know in the comments. I do read them all. See you next time.